My next guest has faced loss to the point that typically breaks a person, but she wasn't broken. She has sought out many different healing ways that has supported her physically, mentally, and spiritually. She has a compelling story, and I invite you inside to learn more. Welcome to the Fabulous at 50 podcast, where we are changing the aging narrative. I'm your host, Joanne Newduck, and I'm thrilled to bring you stories that matter and celebrate your place in the world. As an advocate for lifelong learning, health, and women's empowerment, I believe it's never too late to live the life you've always imagined. Through lively and informative interviews with inspiring guests, we'll explore a wide range of topics relevant to our global sisterhood of vibrant, inquiring women just like you. Join me for today's episode, and let's start changing the aging narrative together. Hello and welcome everyone to today's episode of Fabulous at 50. I have such an inspiring guest here. When I first met this woman and also learned about her story, I was in awe of how she's been able to step through and transform what often really breaks people. She has been able to still find joy in life and to find healing and purpose and meaning. And I'm so excited to welcome her. And before I bring her on, I'm just going to read a little bit of her bio. You'll be able to catch the whole thing down in the show notes. So Trish Bowie is an author, a speaker, and the founder of Divine Compassion Multidimensional Healing System. We're going to hear all about that. It's pretty impressive. She is also the owner of the Western Canada Reiki Training Center and Sacred Light Wellness. Having experienced deep loss at a very young age and through her life, Trish struggled emotionally, spiritually, and physically for many years, fearing that all the males that she loved would be taken from her through loss. Her greatest loss, though, was a female, her daughter, losing her to the streets, mental illness, and drug addiction, waking up every morning wondering if she was dead or alive. I just cannot imagine that type of grief. Grieving her live daughter was more painful than those that had passed away. Because of this great loss, for many years, Trish continued to search for ways to heal, and she truly has found them, and she's here to share her inspiring story with us today. So welcome, Trish.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Joanne.
Yeah, well, we've been plotting this for a little while, and I'm so glad that we're on, and the technology gods have let us be on today. It was a bit of like pushing water uphill today, we found a platform that's working and is doing this recording so we can share out to our community. So honestly, with you, there's so many things I want to ask you. I was at a bit of a loss, like, what are the questions I'm going to start with? Because we can go down so many different avenues and rabbit holes, but why don't we start off? I want to bring out something you just said to me just before we came on. You had said something that you were thinking that as you got older and you got past 65, that you were going to become a little bit not meeker, right? What word did you use? Kind of just
passive.
Or more passive. But that is the complete opposite of what. So why don't we start off with that? Share a bit about what do you mean? So what's happening instead?
Oh my goodness. Well, I thought, especially when the pandemic hit, I thought that's it because I had to shut my doors for one thing. And I didn't know how to use Zoom. I had no idea how to use any of that. Excuse me. But I decided to well, I better hire somebody to show me how to do that. And so I hired a coach and learned how to get on Zoom and do a few Facebook Lives, which I still am a little bit shy about. So you don't see me out there very often.
We all
Anyway,
are. People don't know that. Even when we come on and we la 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 and do this stuff, before it's like, oh my God, what's it going to be like, right? So I hear you.
I think I have to challenge myself for about 30 days and go on every day or something. I don't know what I got to do to get over that hump. But anyway, I started to learn how to use Zoom. And by accident, I found out that I could do a specific treatment over the phone, which I thought could only be done in person. And so that was super exciting as well. And I started to teach on Zoom. People were asking me to teach Reiki. And I thought, oh my God, like I don't believe in it. I don't believe in online training when it comes to Reiki. It's totally against what my beliefs were all these years. And I've been a Reiki master since 1996. So I've had that belief for a long time. Anyway, I said to my students, well, how about if I try it? And if it doesn't work, if you don't feel like you got anything from it, when the pandemic is over, you can come and do it in person.
That's a
And
pretty good
so,
deal.
yeah. So what I did was I decided to use my multidimensional healing um, attunement instead of just my Usui attunement. And I used it, which is a lot of symbols. And it was really powerful. And the students were feeling it. And I felt like they were actually, it was more powerful for them than it was for my students in person. So it was really interesting.
Hmm.
And they must have been getting some of that multidimensional opening as well, is what I'm thinking. But anyway, I did that and it took off. Like I was teaching a lot on Zoom, a lot of Reiki. I also am a facilitator for Louise Hay's Heal Your Life. And so I was teaching some of those classes on Zoom as well, and some were doing work with teens, and it was great. It was absolutely great. So it opened up a whole new world for me and made me go, okay, wait, I'm not ready to
I'm
to
not
sit.
ready to retire. No, you're just getting started.
Just
Now
getting
let's
started.
let's go a little bit before that. So that's kind of where you are now. I know you're teaching and you're back to teaching in-person classes and you're doing a bit of a rebrand and redoing your website. So you're just it's almost like getting started again 10 years later, but it's more like I feel like you're in this next wave, which is beautiful. But if we go back a little bit, you have this beautiful smile and such a glow and light about you. However, this has been a challenge, right? You've faced, like all humans face loss at different times, but honestly, some people face more than others at certainly at different ages. Are you open to sharing a little bit about your story as to how you even stepped into the healing world? Because obviously, when most of us when we were 10 years old, it wasn't like I'm going to grow up to be a Reiki master. We didn't even know what that was. So, can you share a bit about your story?
I actually wanted to be a nurse, and I went into nursing to start with and got sick. And I got sick. I got pneumonia a couple of times, and they politely asked me to leave the program
Oh
because
no, I'm sorry
yeah,
about that.
they just didn't think I would be able to, get through it because I had been missing so much. And
Mm,
in those days, I used to get bronchitis every month, so I get sick a lot. But anyway, I in my life, I guess I started getting ill when I started having more losses. And
mm,
so at a very young age, I lost my father. Actually lost all my grandparents by the age of 8. And then my father
sorry.
died when I was 13.
Okay.
And so then after that, I had a boyfriend who actually I just started going out with, and he died. And but I had just started, so I don't think it affected me that much. But when I looked over the whole picture of that period of my life, I realized that yeah, it was there. I just wasn't acknowledging it, I guess. And my
Yeah.
husband died of a drowning accident in our yard when I was 24, and I had a 1 year old and a 4 year old. He was in a boat. He was trying to bluestone the dugout to get rid of the algae. He had my 4 year old son in the boat with him. And my son at one point asked his dad to let him out, that they were going to drown. And so his dad brought him to the shore. Normally he would have said, quit being a little suck, we're out in the country, out in the bush. And but he didn't. He brought him to the shore, and I took him into the house to get him some juice. And I came back out with the baby and him, and we were just sitting on the lawn. And I could hear this and splashing. And I knew something was wrong. And I went out and checked, and he was out of the boat. And he was a ways from the boat. And I told him, grab onto the boat. I'll get you a rope. And when he did, I went for the baby back in the crib. And when he grabbed on, the boat hit him in the head and stunned him.
Oh
So by the
no.
time I got back, his back was turned to me. He was bobbing up and down in the water, and I jumped in. And by the time I got there, he was gone. It was a million gallon dugout. And yeah, so he was gone. And I ran across or took my vehicle across the road to get help. And by the time the guys got over there, there were a bunch of them were diving for him. They couldn't find him. So it took skin divers an hour to find him.
Oh, I'm
So
so
that was
sorry.
tragic.
That part I didn't know that part of your story. That
Yeah,
I
that was
cannot
tragic.
imagine at 24 years old with two children facing that.
Yes, and I didn't have a driver's license. I was out in the middle of nowhere, and my family were 4 hours away. His family were nearby. So
Mm,
yeah, it was definitely a challenge, but um, it made me strong, and it made me. I remember, like, my husband and his brother had a land survey business, and I always wanted to have my own business. That was always in me for some reason. And so when he passed, I thought I have to do something. I can't just not do something with my
mm,
life.
mm,
And so I started out with fish scale art, which was a native art form.
mm.
And it actually took off and sold all over the world. And the government bought a lot of pieces for dignitary gifts. And
Really
so, yeah,
interesting.
that's another hat I wore. But doing that, fish scale art was very intricate. It was a native art, and I had to use tweezers. And so it was very close work. And so I was starting to damage my neck.
Oh
And I
yes, of
had to have,
course.
yeah, so I had to have a lot of treatments. And I was allergic to drugs, so I couldn't take drugs for it. And I started putting magnets all over me, and I tried all sorts of different things. So then I also, because of, I think, believe now, all my loss, I started getting a lot of illness and had a lot of surgery. So my first year after my husband died, I had back surgery. The next year, I had my appendix out. The year after that, I had my gallbladder out. So it was like one thing after another. And if you read Louise Hay's book, Finding the Probable Cause, I was so amazed at how they all connected with what was going on in my life. But I still
Fascinating.
believed by thinking positive. You have to be in a positive state to get through all of this stuff in life that's thrown at us.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Yeah. So from there, I mean, obviously you had the beautiful art and so forth. How did you go from that to then getting into the healing arts, like the Reiki and
Yeah.
everything else, like all of us eventually are drawn to? Most of the time, I mean, almost very few healers do I know or health practitioners go into it if they haven't first needed it themselves. Like that's for me. I know I needed support and menopause turned me upside down. And so I found all the things that I found that helped me. I then wanted to train in, and now I offer my signature fabulous health sessions. I believe you did something similar. That did you find these to help you, and that's how you got into it? Do you want to share a
Yeah,
little bit
I
about
got so bad. And like I say, I was having surgery after surgery. But after that, I moved to Central Alberta. I remarried 5 years later
that? Mm,
and had another child, moved to Central Alberta with my husband and family, and found I really still wasn't happy. Like there was still something inside of me internally. So it was everything I suppressed for all those years, walking
mhm,
around with the smile, the happy face, and I was suppressing all my pain. And so I started to get very ill. I couldn't lift a cup of coffee at one point, and I went into the hospital. The doctor thought I actually had a disease, and it takes people's lives. It affects their respiratory. And so he was checking my respiratory every 15 minutes.
mm,
And that night I just prayed, and I just said, please tell me what is wrong with me. You know, what is wrong? And I just felt this warmth go through the top of my head all the way down to my
mm,
feet. And
mhm.
I was told stress.
Yeah.
And so when he came to my room the next morning, very distraught because he couldn't figure out what was wrong, I just said, "Well, I know what's wrong. I have stress." And he was just shocked. He was in shock. He said, "Do you believe that?" And I told him, he said, "How do you know?" And I told him. And he said, "Do you believe that?" And I said, "Yes." He said, "Well, you better go home. You better change your life because I have seen people go blind from stress, end up in wheelchairs for life from stress." And he said, "You're on your way there."
Yeah.
And so I did. I went home and I changed my life. And
Chris, I'm just going
Reiki,
to add in there. I'm going to add in there that so that the listener really gets that I read a stat that something I it's they believe that over 90% of all visits, I'm not like don't quote me on this, but it's certainly a high percentage, a ridiculous percentage, all visits to for healthcare are related can be traced back to stress.
yeah,
I
I
mean,
believe it.
obviously car accidents and different things like that. Accidents are different, but almost everything else. Well, people go, well, I have this or I have that illness. Well, a lot of it is, like even not necessarily diabetes, juvenile diabetes, but type 2. Well, it's a stress on the system from often eating the wrong foods or being overweight. There's different ways our bodies
Absolutely.
stress. So the fact that and we're talking quite a few years ago, a few decades ago that this happened to you, that it wasn't as well known that, oh, your lifestyle is going to impact. So like good on that doctor for really listening to you. So I want to
Yeah.
keep hearing, keep going.
Yeah. So anyway, at one point, I was starting to become allergic to life. I felt like everything I was allergic to,
Mm,
everything in my environment, I was always feeling allergic to something. So
mm,
it was getting very difficult. And like I say, I became allergic to drugs. So I couldn't help my pain anyway, except for using these magnets. That's the only thing I knew of at that time. And then I heard about Reiki, which I thought was really weird. I grew up Catholic and I thought, I'm not doing any of that weird stuff. I don't know where that energy is coming from. And I mean, I really grew up Catholic. There was a period of time where a priest actually helped to raise my father. He was an orphan. My
mm,
aunts grew up in the convent. So we had the clergy around us a lot. So I thought, oh, I'm not doing any of that weird stuff. You know what? I crashed. I crashed. I got really, really sick. And a friend, I asked her to come and give me a massage. And she said, it's not a massage you need, it's Reiki. And so I surrendered. I was so ill. And she Reiki'd me, and I was in awe. I could not believe how my body had changed, how my energy had changed. So after that, I had to learn how to do it. I had to learn how to heal myself. But I first started because I thought of my family, and there was a lot of stuff going on within my family's health. And I just thought if I could help them. But really, it's about helping yourself first, and it's about healing
yeah,
yourself first, and then
mm,
helping other people.
absolutely. It's like being on the airplane. You got to put that oxygen on first, or else you're not going to be any help to anyone. You become it's
Always,
fascinating that people go, I don't want to be a
totally.
burden to other people, but yet they feel guilty about self-care. And
But
which
they
is not
are.
great. You need to take care of yourself first.
Yeah,
Now, not to say that if you're caring for yourself
yeah,
and something still happens, well, that happens. But we
it
need to
happens.
love.
Yeah.
I saw a really wonderful, it was like I don't know if it was TikTok, it was a little reel, a little clip, and it was this young girl filming her great grandmother, who's 104 years old, and she's asking, what can you share with people? What is your um, secret to longevity? And she's just really sweet. Obviously, English as her second language, and she just kind of says, she just goes, "You have to love yourself first. You need to take care of yourself. You're with yourself your whole life. Everyone else comes and goes." And it was like, it was pretty poignant, right? So
Yeah,
amazing. So then,
exactly. And
as were you able, then obviously through these trainings and working, getting Reiki and learning it, you were able to kind of heal yourself and care for your family more that way. Yeah.
well, absolutely. Between Reiki and uh, Louise Hay's You Can Heal Your Life book, I read that book and I started saying affirmations every day.
Hmm.
Every time I went for a walk, I say, you're getting stronger and you're healthier and healthier every day, or you're stronger and stronger every day. You're healthier and healthier in every way. That was my affirmation. And before I knew it, I was getting healthier and healthier. The chest pains I had all the time were going away. I mean, I was very afraid. My dad died at 51 of a heart attack.
Mm,
So those chest pains, I was sure I was not going to see 50.
mm,
So yeah, I'm pretty impressed how quickly your life can turn around when you put it into action. You put, healing into action, whether it's Reiki, any type of energy work, is fabulous.
mhm.
And affirmations, I think, are amazing as well. Just really believing and having that passion that they'll help you and they'll make a difference.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you and I were talking a bit just how there's a lot of parallels, not all the circumstances, but there are some parallels in our life and how we went into energy work, or your focus is a little more the Louise Hay, my focus is a bit more the belief reparenting, which gets to an affirmation, but it sometimes when people say an affirmation, and I'm sure you have ways of helping people, is if immediately their mind goes no way, then it's not going to take, right? It has to get to that point of truly believing.
Right.
So there's different techniques to get there, which is so beautiful that you've been able to do that. And we have a mutual friend that's just recently trained with you, and she is over the moon. And I love the work that she has gone and she's doing this self-care Reiki, because when I see her as a practitioner, I mean, I'm the practitioner, and when she comes in, I saw a big difference before and after your course, so which is fantastic. And I love that. So
Yeah.
I'm as I said, I took my level one years ago, probably decades ago. I've gone different routes, but I'm feeling like maybe I have to circle back and do a touch up and do a refresher course with you. Now,
That'd be awesome. And I have
yeah.
the Eastern and the Western teachings, which are, it's
Okay.
great.
So let's touch base on
Yeah.
that just for a little bit. There's probably people listening that are like, "What? I've heard the word Reiki, but what is it?" Do you want to just in like a short synopsis, a kind of acorn shell, share what Reiki is and what is the difference between the East and West teachings?
Okay. So Reiki is Japanese. It comes from the Japanese, and it's universal energy or energy from God, whatever it is for you, whatever your belief is. For me, I believe in God, so I just tap into that energy, that beautiful divine white light, and I
Hmm.
bring it through the crown of my head. And as a Reiki master, I've had the attunements, I've had the openings to allow me to do that and to pass that on to other students. The
Hmm.
difference between the Eastern and the Western Reiki is in the Western Reiki, it's very basic. You learn head to toe treatments. They're great, no denying it. They're absolutely fabulous. And we all believed that we were taking the original Reiki, and we weren't. It wasn't
Hmm.
Dr. Usui's original Reiki that we were all taking. It was passed on. Mrs. Takata had brought it to Hawaii, but it had changed. And so it became a head to toe treatment. Where Dr. Usui or Usui, however you want to pronounce it, his teachings are very specific. They're
Mm.
very
Okay.
specific. And so there's lots of beautiful techniques and meditations that I've been able to bring over into Canada and teach here.
Oh, that's fantastic. And when did you move from
Mm.
I'm using this to support myself and transition into I'm now teaching others? Because there's sort of help yourself, help your family. There's kind of a progression here. Have clients, and then it's a fairly big leap to I'm now going to be the trainer of the trainer, like train the trainer kind of thing, or train
Yeah,
the practitioner. How long ago did that happen, and what
it happened
spurred
pretty
you on?
fast.
Okay.
It happened pretty fast. So I trained in 1996, and it was so amazing the results I was getting. I was so excited. And I remember I was talking to my aunt, and I had my hands on her shoulders, and she said, Wow, your hands are like a heating pad. I said, "Oh yeah, that's just Reiki." Reiki coming through, I guess. And anyway, I started putting my hands on people to treat them and having amazing results. So it wasn't long that I threw myself into a full-blown business. I feel like it happened right away. I was doing like 18 people a week. So
Wow.
and Reiki wasn't really heard about. I was actually writing for an Central Alberta paper about Reiki. And so it became more and more known
Yeah.
at that time. But
You were a
before that, people
pioneer.
were
You
kind of
were
hiding.
a Alberta healing
Yes,
pioneer, energy healing pioneer, which is phenomenal.
yes.
Um, Fantastic. And then that was the natural progression to then I'm going to teach the courses. I'm curious as to how do you,
Yeah,
when you're trained to work with people, what level do you get to where you can then like teach others?
I think it just depends on the individual. So it was a Catholic nun that taught me the first time. I've actually studied under 9 masters from around the world.
Oh,
But
beautiful.
my first master was a Catholic nun. And
I
she
love that.
actually phoned me and told me, Trish, you have to be a master. I hear the work you're doing in Alberta. It's amazing. And I'm like, I
Awesome.
don't want to be a master. I had no
Love
desire
it.
to be a
But
master whatsoever.
she had a greater vision for you.
She did. And I just said to her, she phoned me every day for about 5 days. I told her, sister, if I'm meant to be a master, I'll be there at that class. And I couldn't sleep at all the night before. I knew I had to go do it. And so I did. And honestly, I never turned back. I started teaching as soon as I was able to. I felt confident enough to teach. That's when I started to teach. And it was not long after. I think it depends on the individual for sure.
Amazing. Well, we're
I'm
very
dedicated. I
grateful.
do Reiki on myself every day.
Yeah, I can see the passion
Absolutely.
in you, and I love that it was a Catholic nun that taught you about this first. I think my first connection with this type of work, I had ideas when I was in high school a little bit, but I didn't know lots about it. But when I was a nurse, when I first graduated, so we're talking like just back in 88, right? 88, 89. The unit I worked on, I loved it. It was fairly progressive and it had oncology. I've worked oncology most of my career. And they had a couple of resource nurses, and one of the nurses used complementary kind of the woo woo arts at the time. And of course, some of the doctors were like, amazing, whatever you can do to help my patient, you know. Others were like, don't even go in the room. Like they were just weirded out about it.
Right.
But she would
Yeah.
go in and she would often do kind of Reiki or, and she tells this wonderful story where it was a family that um there was some relatives there, and it was a relative that didn't speak any English at all, and she had walked in, and but she was sitting with the person. She often worked with the ones that were palliative, but it was to ease their comfort, you know. Like
Yeah.
I always believe that even when a cure cannot
Yes.
be, there is always room for healing. Two different things, right? So she was sitting there, she was actually
Absolutely.
running some Reiki, and this the old uncle came in and without a word between them actually just joined in, and they worked together, and they were Japanese, and they ran it, and I just got shivers. And she would share these stories and the work that she did, and someone almost taught it at the time, but I really feel that it sparked an interest. And I know so many nurses and healthcare givers that would love to do more of that and have it incorporated, but it takes decades to bring things in more. But you know, back then acupuncture wasn't paid for on your health care. So now it often is on your extra insurance. So things are coming a long way. And I hope that way more gets covered because it has a place and time, and it makes such a difference. Look at yourself. Like that's phenomenal. And I know you have used this now for other sadnesses and losses within your life, and very grief recently. I'm very sorry for your loss, but I do remember a post that you made that you were like, you basically said something along the lines as I'm desperately grieved, I'm desperately sad, and I have the tools to kind of get through this, right? You were, and so you must have drawn on everything you could over this last year.
Yeah, absolutely. And Reiki is huge for me. Um, I've been I Reiki myself every day. That is a part of my life, has been a part of my life since 1996. If I try and miss a few days, I remember why I should be doing Reiki.
That's
It's that
exactly.
huge for me. It makes a huge,
It's like brushing your teeth. If you
yeah,
miss, I'm the same for mine. I
yeah,
do I do a daily
mhm,
energy routine as well. And if I'm feeling weird
yeah.
in the afternoon, I'm like, what's wrong? And I'm like, oh my gosh, yes, I got up and I got rushing and I missed it. So, so
Yes, you
important.
notice.
So important.
Hmm. You
How
notice for sure. And I was
no, go
just going to say something else that's really huge for me and that has kept me going since my loss of my daughter, especially,
ahead.
is, you know, Louise Hay always says, you can change your life with one thought. And I loved that saying of hers. And it can be a good thought or a bad thought. So I choose good
Yes.
thoughts. I
Yes.
choose to be happy. I
Yeah.
choose to be filled with joy. I choose to bring joy towards me. And if there's something that isn't joyful, I send love to that. I never send out anything negative. Um, if I have a negative thought, if it comes in, I have to send love right away because of my systems, my multidimensional systems. It keeps me in check. I have to be in a place of love always. If I'm not, I'm in trouble.
Yeah. Well, it shows because you do, someone just steps into your presence and there's this glow about you, and
Oh
it
my.
really is a testament to how no matter how low somebody is, there's always hope. There's always a way to come out and to get better and move on in that way. I'm curious, uh how does somebody get started in the first part? Like if somebody's sitting out there going, I feel drawn to taking a Reiki course, how do they do it? Are you still doing online courses, or are you doing it in person or a blend? If someone wants to reach you, how do they reach you?
They can either they can actually email me at Reiki training at gmail.com. I'm
Right.
also on Facebook as Trish Bowie. Those are probably a couple of good ways.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they're
I think
probably the
that's the
best because
best
I
way
know
probably.
you're
And
rebranding a website, correct? You're coming up with
that's
a new
right. We're
website.
just
Is that
in the midst.
and what is it? Sacred Light Wellness?
Sacred Light Wellness. It's a
Nice.
new brand. So that tells me I'm alive and I'm going to keep going here. I'm not getting passive, obviously. I'm rebranding.
Nice.
But it feels really right for my spirit right now, for who I am, to have that name. I felt a shift. The minute I took that name on, I felt a complete shift of my energy, for one thing. It just felt really right and it
Nice.
felt really good.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. So I have a question for you because I know we're getting close to winding up. Is can you share, a couple, maybe three pearls of wisdom that you would like to share with our listening audience that can be sort of your guiding motto? Um, yeah, because can you summarize a
Okay.
couple things that you'd like to share with people?
Well, I have probably a million things, but I'm going to say this.
Yes.
Yes, and this is something I always tell my students, and I tell people who aren't my students, connect to that divine white light, whatever that is for you. Again, it may be universal, it may be God. It doesn't, whatever it is for you. I'm not here to judge you, but do bring that white light into you frequently throughout the day, just allowing yourself to purify your body, to move that light through you. It's amazing. The results are absolutely amazing if you do that.
Beautiful.
Also, looking in the mirror, looking in the mirror and just really saying, I love you. Trish, I
Beautiful.
love you. I really love you. Getting comfortable with that. And if it feels weird, keep doing it. Eventually, you won't be weird.
It's
That's
true.
a really good thing too, because we're so hard on ourselves. We're just so
Yes.
hard on ourselves, and I am as well. I'm not on a pedestal. I'm a human, just like everybody else. So I have to work on that too. And I just said, like, I have a hard time getting on lives. Obviously, there's a block there I got to work through. So I'm human. And then really using like Louise Hay, that really gets me through all the time. Just you can change your life with one thought. Just having that belief and knowing it's up to you. It's up to you to make the difference in your life. It's not up to God. It's not up to the people around you. It is up to you. And just
Love that.
keeping
It's
that
true.
in
We
your
have
thoughts.
free will.
Yeah, yeah,
That's beautiful. That is a beautiful message
for
because we
sure.
do. We have free will, and we draw on what I'm hearing you is we draw on God's love and light, or whatever universal love and light is the energy we draw on, but it's us on how we wield it within the earth plane, right? So
Exactly.
we can either bringing about joy and love and sharing and caring for our being, which is the temple that we have been gifted. And I've so enjoyed talking with you today. You're such an inspiration. I'm like truly inspired, and I feel, that extra empowered of, no matter where you are, if
Oh,
something's not working for you, not every technique or method works for everyone. Would you agree? And so if
right.
something isn't working for you, or
Yeah.
if you're feeling like there's something more, go out and try it. And right now, hey, try Reiki next if you haven't already taken it. So we'll put everything in the show notes for you.
Yeah. And when I trained in so many different systems, and not just Reiki, like many, I'm a hypnotherapist as well. I've got lots of different background because I kept searching. I wanted to help me get through whatever I had to get through, and I want to help people as well. So thank you so much, Joanne, for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Well, it's been wonderful. And please check out the show notes. All of Trisha's information, her full bio and story is in there. And we so appreciate you listening today. And we hope that you feel empowered and inspired and a little bit educated. And we'll see you next week. Take care. Bye bye. Thank you so much for tuning in today. But before you leave, I'm curious. What pearl of wisdom are you taking away from today's episode? I do hope it held some inspiration or information for you to live your best life. If you are not yet part of our sisterhood, I invite you to join our community by visiting our website, fabulous@50.com, and you'll receive a free copy of our ebook, Make Mine Fabulous, 21 Ways to Energize Your Life. It is packed with loads of tips and tricks. Plus, if you haven't already done so, please subscribe to this podcast and leave us a review to let us know what you think. Remember, keep choosing fabulous. It's never too late to live the life you deserve. Catch you on the next episode.